In the vast golden plains of southern Africa, beneath the burning skies and whispering grasses, a pair of lions had ruled their domain for many years. The male, with a proud, wind-tattered mane and eyes sharp as obsidian, was known among other beasts as Koda, a silent guardian of the savannah. His companion, Leya, bore the elegance of the moon in her steps and the fire of the sun in her heart. Together they had hunted, roamed, fought, and survived, but their world was changing. The rains that once came like clockwork now hesitated, lingering far too long behind the horizon. Rivers receded into cracked earth, and the herds that once danced across the fields grew thin, vanishing into the shadows of drought. The sounds of the savannah changed: fewer hooves, fewer calls, fewer signs of life. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the acacia trees, Koda stood on a jagged rock watching the silence unfold. Leya approached him quietly, her ribs visible beneath her tawny fur. She nuzzled his side, and in that quiet touch, they both understood they had to leave. The decision was not made lightly. This was the land of their ancestors, the soil soaked with the scent of birth and blood of battles won and kin lost. But staying meant death. That night they crossed the boundary of their territory, not as rulers but as wanderers. Their migration was not a single event, but a grueling odyssey of countless sunrises and agonizingly long nights. They moved with caution, always alert, pausing only when exhaustion demanded it. Hunger gnawed at their bellies like a cruel wind. They drank from muddy puddles, fought off hyenas over scraps, and braved the stares of wandering leopards in contested lands. At night, the cold bit harder than any fang. Leya would curl beside Koda, her breath shaky, her body trembling with fatigue. Koda, though equally worn, stayed vigilant. He often walked circles around their resting spot, his ears twitching at every sound, his eyes scanning the darkness. He had scars, and the journey gave him more. Once they stumbled into a territory ruled by a coalition of rogue males. The intruders chased them deep into a thorny gorge. Blood streaked Koda's flank where a branch tore his skin, but they survived barely. Leya limped for days afterward, and Koda hunted alone, bringing back a half-dead porcupine, a desperate catch but enough to sustain them. There were moments of beauty too. In the early dawn, they saw flocks of flamingos rise from a shallow lake, their wings catching the sun. They drank in silence by an oasis, no bigger than a lion's paw, where dragonflies danced. Despite the suffering, they still moved forward, guided by the faintest instinct, survival and something deeper, hope. Weeks passed. Then one morning the wind shifted, with it came a new scent life. The scent led them to the edge of Makhado National Park, a sprawling reserve whispered of by migrating elephants and chattered about by high-flying birds. Here grasslands rolled endlessly like ocean waves, and rivers gleamed like silver ribbons beneath the sun. Koda paused at the crest of a hill overlooking the boundary of the park. Below them stretched a mosaic of life trees dense with monkeys, distant zebras grazing, and faint outlines of water buffalo. Leya exhaled slowly, her eyes softening. They had made it, but Maccato was not wilderness untouched. As they descended into the park's outskirts, unfamiliar sights made them wary. Tall metal fences lined certain paths. Human scent lingered on the air. Strange wheeled beast patrol. Vehicles rumbled in the distance of stirring dust. That night they found shelter near a rocky outcrop hidden beneath thick bushes. Koda remained on high alert, his ears twitching toward the strange noises of human activity. Leya slept in fits, waking, often disoriented by the new sounds and smells. Unknown to them, two pairs of human eyes had already spotted their presence. Saifo, a veteran patrol driver, noticed something strange during his morning rounds. Large paw prints, fresh and heavy, near the central river. He knelt beside one of the prints and ran his fingers across the indentation. "These aren't from our usual prides," he muttered. Beside him, Namsa, a calm, focused woman with eyes like hawks and notebooks always in hand, joined him. "They're new," she said quietly, "and they're traveling together." The next day, they found tufts of fur caught on a branch and a trail of bones from a recent kill in antelope. The signs were clear: a male and female, likely not from Maccato, were inside the park. Saifo and Namsa decided not to intervene. Not yet. They would watch, observe. These lions were survivors, and to rush in might do more harm than good. That evening, the lions approached a shallow stream. Koda drank cautiously, lifting his head between every few laps to scan the surroundings. Leya stood nearby, ears twitching. Suddenly, a low growl rumbled from Koda's throat. Across the field, a patrol vehicle came into view. Sifo slowed the car. "There they are," he whispered. "Majestic." Namsa grabbed her binoculars. "She looks tired. He's guarding her." They didn't know yet the bond between these lions, the trials they had endured. But they would learn, and soon they would be part of a story much greater than patrols and notes. For now, the lions retreated back into the bush, the evening light casting long shadows over their tired bodies. They were no longer just wanderers. They had arrived at the gates of a new chapter. In the weeks that followed their arrival at Maccato, Koda and Leya began to adapt to their new surroundings. The park offered relative safety, an abundance of small prey, and most importantly, water. But the instincts of wild creatures never rested. Each night, Koda would rise before the stars had fully claimed the sky. He paced around their chosen territory near a river bend, roaring low to mark his presence. It wasn't just a warning to other animals, it was a declaration they had survived, and they belonged here now. Leya, though, was different. She was restless, often rising during the night, pacing aimlessly, lying down only to rise again. She had grown more cautious, more distant, and her appetite fluctuated. Namsa, who had taken to watching them from a discreet hideout, began to take notice. "She's pregnant," she told Sifo one morning, her voice trembling with the certainty of intuition. Sifo raised an eyebrow. "You think so? She moves like it, her belly's changing. And look at him." She pointed to Koda on a distant hill. "He's become even more protective." Sifo leaned against the vehicle, crossing his arms. "If she's pregnant, we'll need to prepare. That could be the first wild birth we've monitored from start to finish." And so they waited just as the lions did. By the 4th month, there was no doubt Leya was heavy with life. Her walk had slowed, her gaze more grounded, and the softness in Koda's behavior deepened. He brought her food from every kill, watched her even as she slept, and no longer roared as often as if to not disturb her. Then the rain came. It was unexpected, a midnight downpour that turned the parched savannah into a temporary wetland. Thunder cracked the skies as the two lions took shelter beneath a jutting cliff. Leya was already in pain. The contractions had begun earlier that day, subtle and spaced, but now with the rain, the pain sharpened. She groaned, her body tense and quivering. From a safe distance, Namsa and Sifo watched through night binoculars. "She's in labor," Namsa whispered, "but it's not going well." Sifo's jaw tightened. "She's not moving. Look at him. He's circling like mad." They were right. Koda paced furiously, growling, low eyes flicking between Leya and the distant darkness. He had no understanding of what was happening to her, only that she was hurting and he could not fix it. 2 days passed. Leya had barely eaten. Her moans came more frequently, but no cub emerged. The situation was dire. Namsa knew the dangers of intervening. Tranquilizing a lion in active labor could be fatal, but doing nothing would mean certain death. A choice had to be made. Sifo stared at the medical kit in the back of the vehicle. Inside was an emergency birthing aid, a powerful but natural compound meant to stimulate delivery. It had been used once before on a tranquilized cheetah in crisis. Never on a lion, never while conscious. "Let's try," Namsa said quietly, clutching the syringe. They drove slowly toward the cliff where the lions were sheltering. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with tension. As the vehicle crunched over wet grass, Koda rose from his position and growled, deep, guttural, and full of warning. "He's going to charge!" Sifo said, "Foot on the brake." But Koda didn't. He stood his ground, muscles tight, his mane bristling in the breeze. His eyes weren't filled with hatred but fear. He was afraid for Leya. Namsa stepped down from the vehicle slowly. Carefully, her movements calculated like a predator's. She held no weapons, only the small syringe. "I need to get close," she said over her shoulder. "Don't move," Koda growled again, stepping forward. Then a sound came, soft, pitiful, Leya's moan. He froze. Namsa took her chance. She inched closer, whispering, soothing words. Leya barely noticed. Her eyes were half-lidded, her body exhausted. Namsa reached out, touched her flank gently, and injected the birth aid into the thick skin near her hip. Sifo's heart hammered in his chest. Koda snarled but did not strike. Namsa backed away slowly, step by step, and then they waited. Minutes passed, then an hour. Leya cried out sharply, her body lurching. Sifo gripped the steering wheel. Namsa leaned forward, not daring to blink. Another cry, then movement. A slick, tiny form slipped from Leya's body onto the grass. Silence. Leya twisted around, licking the cub, urging it to breathe. And then a cry, a tiny, fragile squeal that pierced the night like a bell. Koda stepped forward and licked his newborn cub. Sifo exhaled. Namsa wiped a tear from her cheek. They didn't move for a long time. In the heart of the wilderness, under the dark sky of Africa, a lion cub named Mosi was born, a symbol of survival, of trust, of the impossible made real. The sun rose gently over Makhado National Park, casting golden light across the dew-covered grass. Beneath a tall baobab tree, Koda stood watchful while Leya curled protectively around her newborn cub. Mosi, barely the size of Koda's paw, mewed softly, searching instinctively for warmth and milk. Namsa and Sifo had returned to their station, but their minds lingered in the field. That morning, as part of the routine, they drove back to the site slowly, carefully, unsure if they would be welcomed. To their quiet astonishment, Koda didn't growl this time. He merely looked at them, his amber eyes unreadable. Then he lay down beside Leya. Namsa raised her binoculars. He remembers, she whispered, and trusts, Sifo added. Over the following days, they kept their distance but observed with deep reverence. Mosi grew stronger by the hour. His tiny paws began to explore the world around him, clumsily tripping over rocks and grass blades. Leya watched him with unwavering attention, licking his fur clean every few minutes. Koda took on the role of sentinel. He rarely hunted now, staying close to the den site. His ears perked at the slightest sound. When a troop of baboons came too close, he leapt from the grass with a deafening roar, scattering them like dry leaves. Namsa recorded every moment in her journal. "We're not just seeing wildlife," she wrote. "We're witnessing a bond, a new pride forming from dust and hope." Weeks turned into a month. Mosi was now bounding around the den with a mischief only the young possess. He leapt on Leya's tail, pounced on grasshoppers, and practiced tiny roars that sounded more like hiccups. One morning, a herd of impala wandered near Koda. Seeing an opportunity, silently stalked away. Leya followed slowly, with Mosi hiding in the brush as he was taught. It was the first time Namsa and Sifo witnessed the parents hunt together since Mosi's birth. The moment was electric. Koda moved like a shadow. Leya mirrored him. In a flash, Koda burst from cover, scattering the herd, while Leya lunged from the opposite direction. Within seconds, an impala fell. They didn't eat immediately. Instead, Leya returned first to the cub, nudging him gently toward the kill, letting him sniff, watch, and learn. Koda, ever patient, stood nearby, allowing Mosi to take his time. "This isn't just survival," Sifo murmured. "This is education." That afternoon, clouds gathered, casting long shadows over the savannah. Mosi, after eating his first taste of meat, lay curled between his parents. Namsa couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. "They've become a family," she said. "They've become Maccato." As Mosi grew, so did the connection between the lions and the humans who watched over them. Each day, the patrol car would drive by the hilltop where Koda often sat, and each time he would glance toward them, not as a threat, but as an old friend. One day, as they approached, they found Koda standing with Leya on a grassy slope. Beside them, Mosi trotted about, full of curiosity. The cub noticed the vehicle and, rather than shy away, tilted his head, studying the odd creature with spinning wheels. "He's not afraid," Namsa smiled. "He was born into a world where humans didn't hurt him." Sifo replied. They parked the car and sat quietly. No movement, just the wind. Then something remarkable happened. Koda took a few steps toward the vehicle. Not charging, not growling, just acknowledging. He stopped, gave a low, steady grunt, not a warning, but a greeting, then turned back to his family. Namsa wiped away a tear. "They know deep down, they know we helped them." In the days that followed, Mosi began to mirror his father. He'd climb small rocks, practice roars at birds, and even mimic the way Koda lay, with his front paws crossed. Leya continued to nurse him, but also began encouraging short adventures, hiding behind bushes, practicing short bursts of speed. The cub was strong, quick, curious, and fiercely loved. As the wind rustled through the grass and the trees whispered secrets to the sky, the trio became a symbol for the entire reserve. At the Visitor Center Park, rangers shared the story with school children and guests, the tale of a lion couple who crossed the wild to find sanctuary, and of a cub named Mosi, who was born because two humans dared to step closer when nature called. A photo of Koda, Leya, and Mosi was framed at the entrance of the main office under the title, Guardians of Maccato, where hope was born. And each evening as the sun sank low and painted the horizon in fire, Koda would climb the hill and roar, not just to mark territory, but to remind the wind, the trees, and perhaps the stars they had survived. They were home seasons changed across Maccato, painting the grasslands in shades of gold and emerald. Mosi, once a fragile cub, barely clinging to life, now stood tall beside his father, his coat gleaming under the sun. He had inherited Koda's quiet strength and Leya's sharp gaze. Koda, older now, moved slower, but his eyes never left the horizon. He would still rise at dawn, walk the ridge overlooking their territory, and let out a low roar that echoed through the valley. It was no longer a call of dominance, but of memory. Leya often lay in the shade, watching Mosi pounce on shadows, test his strength against the wind. She had given life in the most fragile of moments, and it had become something lasting. Saifo and Nomsa still patrolled daily, and every time the familiar hum of their vehicle reached the hill, three lion heads would turn. Mosi was the first to rise, now bold and proud. Koda would glance their way, his expression calm. Leya, with the softness of a queen, would rest her head gently against her paws. It was a ritual, a wordless thank you. And as the sun dipped behind the hills once more, the wind carried their roars far across the reserve, reminders that even in the wild, hope has a voice. If this story moved, you don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's continue telling the stories of the wild, where courage, love, and nature walk side by side.